Hello again, everyone. It's me, but much more importantly, I am joined now by the one and only Jim Miller.
Hello, hello. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing pretty well. I am hanging in there. How are you doing? How are you holding up? We spoke a few months ago. We've been speaking throughout this weird situation we're in. So how are you holding up?
It comes and goes. Some days are easier than others. Definitely reached the squirrely stage of being at home all the time and sort of longing for social contact outside my front door. So, but still trying to adhere to the social distancing and wearing a mask when I go grocery shopping and doing all the right things. So I just want it to be over, as I'm sure everyone does. But I'm also not under the illusion that it's not going to be over anytime soon unless we all get on board with the rules.
Yes. And I should say a big shout out to everyone in the channel who has been abiding by social distancing and mask wearing, folks who are being safe and responsible, and especially to folks who have been on the front lines, keeping shelves stocked and keeping people healthy. Thank you all so much for everything that you do and for trying to make this a little bit easier for everyone. I needed to get that up.
No, but hey, my sister, I think I told you last time, she is a frontline worker. She's a nurse in Lowell, Mass, up in your neck of the woods there.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Working at the hospital.
That's not a great area right now to be in terms of the situation with COVID. So, yeah, thank you to her. How's she doing? Is she okay?
As far as I know, I mean, with the time difference and her working weird hours, I'm not always up to date on what she's dealing with, and also, you know, she deals with it every day, so she's not really super keen to talk about it.
Understood.
Yeah, so
doing the best she can. That's as much as any of us can do right now, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
So folks in the channel are all having a wonderful good time with variations of your name. We've got Bijmig and Migbij and Jimbo and Jim and my they're having some fun in there. It seems like everyone has a good idea of who you are there, but for folks who might not be familiar with you, would you mind saying for the umpteenth billionth con time I've asked you this, who are you and what is it that you did on Pony?
I'm Big Jim Miller. I started off as a board artist on My Little Pony in season 1, graduated to storyboard supervisor for seasons 2 and 3 and the first Equestria Girls DVD film, and then was a director and then supervising director for the remainder of the run of the series.
I love that you have that answer just down completely. Do you wake up in the middle of the night, it's like just in the middle of that?
Not anymore. Not anymore. I mean, it's been over a year for me now since the show's been done, so don't have as many stress dreams about ponies as I used to.
And having to reel off answers like that.
Yeah.
The stress dreams. So I want to open up with the question that I asked the VAs in the last panel, which I am dubbing the Almost Famous question. Have you seen Almost Famous? Do you know the film?
I have. I do. Cameron Crowe film, yeah.
Yes. Lovely film. And the last question that he asks, you know, so what do you love about music? I'm going to ask you, Jim, what do you love about animation?
Oh, I love being able to tell stories. For the longest time, I wanted to be a comic book artist, but I don't think my art suited the genre. Like at the time, you know, it was early 90s, and there was a lot of like rippling muscles and big chested dudes and all that kind of stuff. And I wasn't great at drawing that. And I always had a weird sense of humor. So I think animation provides a way to tell stories that are odd and fantastical, that maybe are a little bit outside the norm of, you know, what you can do in a book or a comic, because you're combining those words and pictures in a way that moves. You can tell stories where budget isn't as much of a concern, because if you can draw it within reason, you can do it. So that's awesome. I think it's also a way to tell stories about characters, in the case of Pony, who aren't humans but show human-like characteristics without creepy prosthetics or expensive CGI that never holds up or looks good after 10, 15 years. So I don't know, it's just a nice meshing of storytelling and art in a very pure and simple form. And I think there's something to be said about being able to tell simple stories well and mold young minds, impressionable young minds.
What molded your impressionable young mind when you were wee? What sort of comics and cartoons were you into? What were your influences?
Looney Tunes, a lot of Looney Tunes. The Muppet Show. I liked Scooby-Doo a lot at the time, but I have a hard time watching it now.
Why is that?
I think because I know how the sausage is made too much, so I can see sort of where they're cutting corners in terms of the animation,
the repeated backgrounds.
Yeah, and then just in terms of the storytelling, because it wasn't designed to be. It was designed to be serialized, so you could watch any episode at any time. The repetitiveness of the storytelling and stuff gets a little bit tiresome when you're used to longer format storytelling or arcing storytelling, that kind of stuff. A lot of Batman comics. The Tim Burton's Batman movie in '89 is the thing that made me double down on drawing and made me want to. I started collecting comics a little bit more seriously and really got into drawing that from that movie. Star Wars, Indiana Jones, the usual '80s things.
Were you a fan of the Batman animated series in the '90s? That was quite groundbreaking.
The best version of Batman there has been, quite possibly. Incorporated so many great bits from the entire overarching run of Batman as a character into one just great distillation of the character.
And you also watched Pony, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm remembering correctly from our earlier conversations. You watched Gen 1 with your sister.
A little bit, yeah. Like it was always on before something I wanted to watch, like Centurions or Visionaries or something like that. And
wow, that's a deep cut. Visionaries,
yeah,
the Knights of
I love Visionaries.
Magical Light.
Yeah, that's the one.
Good gracious.
The blending of science and magic, also owned by Hasbro.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to see a reboot of that.
I think the whole gimmick with that was the holograms, right? The toys came with these hologram things, and I think hologram technology has advanced so far that it's not really cool anymore. So I don't know that they would really get on board with
maybe not. Maybe
with
that. Kids are spoiled these days. They've got their iPads. They don't need their little holographic cards anymore.
Exactly.
So you started off in the industry on Ed, Edd, and Eddy.
Yes, sir.
Tell me about that, please.
Oh man, well, it was my first.
What was that experience like? As you know, coming out of, well, I mean, coming into it brand new, never having worked in the industry before, that must have.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I learned more on that job doing the work than I ever did in. One of my lights turned off here, and than I ever did at film school. Working on the job. I mean, there was a lot of amazing, talented people and peers that I'm still friends with to this day. I learned pretty much everything I know from my time working on that show.
And you took that kind of with you down to Kid vs. Cat?
Kid vs. Cat was next, yeah. I did one small little piece of a show called Being Ian in between a couple seasons of Ed, Edd, and Eddy, but it was like maybe a few weeks. But I was on Ed, Edd, and Eddy for like 10 years. So
about the same length that you were on Pony.
Yeah. My animation career is unusual in the sense that your average person who works in the industry has worked on a million different things, 6 months here, a year there, a couple years at most. But the fact that I've been on two shows for about 10 years apiece is insane.
So what do you have? No, I can't actually ask you what you're working on yet. The last time we spoke, you were working on some stuff and it hadn't been announced, but it has been announced now.
It's been announced now. We're working on a new season of Johnny Test for Netflix.
Okay.
So I guess Johnny Test has been off the air for 6 or 7 years, but in the interim, it has moved over to Netflix and apparently is doing very well. So they've commissioned a bunch of new episodes for that, which will be coming out sometime next year. I don't know exactly. Their schedule's all messed up because of COVID-related stuff.
Understandably.
So, so that's what I'm working on. It's not like a reboot, but the character design has been tweaked and improved, and the backgrounds look better. We're doing it in Harmony now instead of Flash, and I think overall people are going to be. We're calling it like Johnny 2.0, but it's not. Again, it's not a reboot. It's just a very big plussing up.
I'm following the channel here, and people are quite excited about that by the sound of it. So,
oh, cool!
Keep an eye out for that whenever it appears, folks.
Yeah, sometime next year.
Sometime next year. You can't narrow it down more than that.
Yeah, I think, like I was saying, Netflix's schedule is all in flux because some of the stuff that they had planned to release earlier that was live action has been on hold because of COVID, and they're moving other things up that was going to be like, it's just a mess from what I understand. I don't even know all of what's going on, but from what I've heard, it's a whole thing.
Now, I gather from, back in the before times, before we all were locked down, there was some sort of, this was in chatting with the VAs a minute ago, there was some sort of strange hunting human beings with bows and arrows thing that you were involved in. You all went and did some sort of archery thing.
Yeah. Vincent Chong.
It's wrong to hunt humans for sport, Jim.
Vincent likes to do these sort of active things, and one Christmas he invited a bunch of people he knew from his assorted voice acting and cartoon things to go down to a place in South Vancouver that has like an indoor beach volleyball court. So it's like a big warehouse that's full of sand, and they also have like an indoor archery tag set up. So you get bows and arrows, and the arrows have like these big foam marshmallows on the end.
Okay.
So it was a lot of shooting arrows at each other and hitting each other in the face and stuff. It was real fun. And then Vincent ties it into, he organizes it as a way of pooling everyone to bring in any old clothes they want to donate, and he'll take them all to like a local shelter as well.
Very cool.
Very nice thing that he does. And, we've tried to do a few more other things, but last year he did a thing, I don't remember what it was, I couldn't go. But he did the same kind of thing. So it's like an annual thing for him. It's very, very cool that he does that kind of charity work.
And it's one of the things that I was asking the VAs about as well, was sort of how much connection there is between folks on the show outside of working on the show. Like, do you all still encounter each other outside of work now that the show is?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. A lot of people that were working on My Little Pony are working on this new version of Johnny Test. Devin Cody's producing it. He was the producer on My Little Pony. Tim Stubbe is the supervising director on that. He was on Pony in the first couple seasons as like an animation supervisor, and then he directed for a little bit in season 6. So like there's a lot of people around. I still run into voice actors, like Marika is the voice of Susan on Johnny Test, so we still see her. A couple other people who've been on Pony are on Johnny Test. Lee Tokar is on Johnny Test. Scott McNeil was on Johnny Test, that kind of thing. And then, occasionally we'll run into people just around town, or we all follow each other on social media and chat every once in a while. It's nice. It's a small knit community, and everyone works on everything, and it's kind of nice to keep running into people you like.
Have you had a chance to chat with the other guests? I know you did autographs earlier, so you had a chance to chat with some of the attendees.
I didn't do autographs this time. Oh. I wasn't free to do that, unfortunately.
I am just really screwing up when it comes to the announcements about autographs today. No. I got it wrong on the last panel as well. So folks in the audience, I apologize. I am not in charge of the autograph stuff for good reason. I would get it wrong, clearly. People are now sort of My Little Johnny testing his magic. Is the glow up for Johnny Test just the fact that it's now completely ponified? Is it going to come back on Netflix and everyone's going to be in pastels?
No ponies. I think so far there's been like one horse on the show, and he's only in it very, very briefly. So Very, very different from what I'm used to doing.
And yet you know that there will be fan art of that horse in a pony fight
Of course.
style.
I'm sure it's already, I'm sure there's already pony Johnny Tests out there.
If there isn't, there will be shortly.
Yeah.
Okay, folks who are watching, let's go ahead, please, and open up Bitrate's stage questions in the Discord so we can get some questions from the audience, because I know people are here to hear about Pony and... Oh goodness, my brain is fried. To hear about Pony, that's why.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder what questions they have that I haven't answered. Like I said, it's been over a year since I've been on the show. I don't really have any new information, so I'm curious to see what people want to hear about now. I'm sort of feeling like I'm out of the loop, man.
Well, I will ask that. In my sort of experience, if you don't mind me saying, it's. There is always someone at a con for whom it's their first con, and no matter how many times a question's been asked and the guest has answered it, someone's going to be hearing that for the first time.
Very true. Good point.
So I'm curious, folks in the channel, is there anyone for whom this is their first pony convention? And yeah, please, folks who've heard the answers 1,000 times, bear with us, because someone hasn't heard it and they want to hear it. And maybe it will be answered in a different way this time and you'll learn something new. You never know. Dusty Cat. Someone? Do you know a Dusty Cat?
No, is that like just a dirty feline?
Hey, Dusty. Much love, mate. Dusty Cat would like to know if you've seen Pony Life, and also everyone say hi to Dusty because Dusty is awesome and he's done amazing work for the fandom over the past decade. Can't say enough good things about him.
Yeah, Dusty's great. Pony Life. I have not watched any Pony Life yet. I don't know if I can watch it objectively, and that's not to disrespect what they're doing because I don't know. I just feel like I can't look at it and not sort of deconstruct it and take it apart and go, oh, we wouldn't have done that, or that's not how that character should be, or whatever. And I don't think that's fair to the people who are working on it to have me kind of, not that I would tell them.
No, that makes sense. You're too close to the...
I'm not ready. Yeah, I'm not ready to dive into it and see what they've done with it, good or bad. I don't want to be depressed that they either did way better than we did or the other way, you know.
No, that makes total sense. So we'll stick then to questions about Equestria Girls and about Gen 4, or a very random question that we didn't get to in the last chat. So I'll ask it of you.
Sure.
How much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood?
3.
Good answer. And actually, looking at Bitrate stage, we do have a couple of people, at least, for whom this is their very first con.
Welcome.
So welcome. Hopefully, you'll get a chance to come to an in-person con once we're all safely past COVID. But in the meantime, thank you so much for joining us for this online con. Let's get to some more questions aside from tongue twisters. Starlight Fuff Princess would like to know your favorite episode of the show.
That's always a tough one.
Like asking favorite child, right?
Yeah. I've always equated it to that as a person who does not have children. I mean, the one I'm the most proud of is The Perfect Pair for a lot of reasons. But I do think that it makes, like, that one sticks out in my mind, but I don't know if it's the best episode or my favorite, but that's the one that sort of just is my go-to answer. I do like a lot of season 7 in general. I think is very strong. And I think that there's good stuff through every season of the show. And I mean, there's some episodes that work better than others, but yeah, I think that I do like Shadow Play parts 1 and 2. I think they were particularly difficult episodes. The two-parters are always, I have like a weird sense of pride about them because there's always more story than you can, like trying to get everything into those two-parters in a way that doesn't feel like a giant mess because you have so much stuff to hit and try and make sure that there's some emotional beats and you're not just hitting the plot all the time.
Sure.
You want to make sure there's room for jokes and stuff. So that's a very tricky balancing act. And I think some of them worked out really, really well.
We also have, lots of favorite questions. Favorite of the main 6, same situation, same favorite child situation?
It was, I mean, I love them all for different reasons. My go-to answer is always Applejack, but I think as time went on, I started to have a lot of affinity for Rarity, and her haughtiness was always very fun to work on. I mean, they all have moments that are just great to deal with, and the voice actors and the writers really brought them to life in a way that made them fun to play with.
Jeremy F. would like to know if you read any of the MLP comics. Does the same kind of thing that held true for you with Pony Life hold true with you for the comics? You're still kind of too close to it to want to explore and see what other people have done?
I've read a few of them, especially the early ones, like when I knew Katie Cook before she was on Pony stuff and before I was on Pony stuff, so I was curious about that, and I've sort of dipped in and out on read a few little things here, and just looking just even generally at the stuff, that it's of a very high quality. Everyone I've met who works on the comics is a fan and is very committed to doing good work and being true to the mission statement of the show. So I've always been very impressed with the comics, but I haven't read a lot of them though.
Fair enough. So we've got to that question. I'm just scrolling through. Thank you everyone for coming in with all the questions. Coaster Brony promised a joke question to you, which is, how does Ember sleep with all those horns and spikes?
She's got a special bed
that's and uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's like got a special bed like that has holes in the prearranged spots so that when she rolls over, she just goes and they slot in appropriately.
It's like memory foam only.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. So, a brony mouse. Brony, that's... So a ponified mouse. I'm trying to visualize that, but I love the name. A brony mouse would like to know what is different about your new project compared with Pony. So I guess we can kind of ask that, aside from the obvious differences. For you working on the show, what was different? What lessons did you take from Pony that apply to Johnny Test? What kind of took you by surprise, making the transition to Johnny Test? Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a different format. They're 11-minute stories, so there's not as much time to tell the story. They're a lot more joke driven, which is normal for Johnny Test. I'm also the second director. Tim Stubbe is the supervising director on this one, so taking a bit of a backseat, which is good, because after 10 years of Pony, it's nice to take a little bit of a stress break on that kind of stuff. So that's a little bit different, and sort of being able to, on Pony, I was able to make a lot of decisions on my own, and we have to confer a little bit more on this. But overall, a lot of the sort of mechanics of it, the day-to-day kind of stuff, is very similar. And also, the biggest thing is Pony was done in Flash, and Johnny Test is being done in Harmony. So I'm learning the process of working on a show in Harmony, which is great to learn, because I think a lot of shows and productions and studios are transitioning to Harmony. Flash is kind of getting phased out, and there's a lot of really great things about that program, but there's a lot of different things that on Flash seem to be quite easy and Harmony are more difficult to achieve, and vice versa. So
can you give us kind of examples of that, or is this getting kind of too densely technical? I know people love the technical details. Yeah.
One of the biggest things is the way the models are built in Harmony. They require, and I don't know all, because I'm not building them myself, I don't know all the technical stuff, but they require more things, more views of characters built that on Pony we could kind of cheat with the model, if that makes sense. So on Pony, the difference between a front view and a front 3/4 was a slight shift in the body and then a new head, and the legs were pretty much the same and the tail was kind of the same. You sort of shifted those things out. But on Harmony, you need a whole new rig for both views, so that's a lot more time consuming. Sure. We have a much bigger builds department, and things all need to be set up in a very specific way. Where I feel, especially because especially by the end of Pony, we had all been working in Flash for so long. We had a lot of cheats and shortcuts, and we knew what the program could do and what it couldn't do and what we could get away with. And this is all a lot newer for us, so that we don't have those sort of get out of jail free cards in our back pockets when we get into sticky situations that we hadn't accounted for, if that makes sense.
No, it absolutely does. What are the advantages then of having switched over? You can do more than you could with Flash, despite all of those advantages that Flash and your familiarity with it.
Well, one of the big things is Adobe was no longer supporting Flash,
right?
Especially for animation. So, it was already a joke that we were using a version of Flash on Pony that was 5 or more years out of date. So it would continue to be an issue, like using a program that is like there's no fixes for it. And as machines around us all upgrade into things like 4K, 8K resolution, Flash is not equipped to deal with that.
Although I must say, it just makes what you were able to accomplish with it that much more impressive.
It is. Like the stuff we did on, like, for my money, Pony was the best looking Flash show ever. Like, it did stuff that Flash was not supposed to do. But Harmony, you can do a lot more hand-drawn looking animation. It looks a lot more like hand-drawn. My biggest complaint about it is that the interface is all, as happens with a lot of computer programs, the interfaces were designed by mathematicians, not artists. So there's a lot of like numbers and graphs and things. It's not always super intuitive when you open it up as to what does what. But from what I've seen, once people get used to all those interfaces and have worked with it, some of the things they can do is pretty amazing.
Oh, sorry, I was reading through the incoming questions there. Thank you, though, for your insight there. I think you answered this last time, but just to double check, did you ever participate in Ishirudel's workout class?
I did not. I don't like being sweaty at work. And also, because I was a director, the classes were often over the lunch break, and I usually had things right up until lunch and then immediately after lunch. So the class would start at 12, so you usually had to leave your desk 15, 20 minutes early to get ready and change. And then when it ends at 1, you need to have a shower or something. And if there's a lineup, I would be missing whatever my next meeting was or whatever. And I just didn't feel like I had time for that. Clearly, I have never participated in his exercise class.
I do apologize. I do have questions for you, but I want to try and get to the questions from the audience. I'm just trying to present them in a sensible order. Got some questions about Cozy Glow, which we should maybe chat about. Her motivation to you, is it just solely based on wanting power over other ponies, or is there more going on there for you?
I mean, that was sort of the main underlying thing with her. We kind of, when Nicole first presented the idea for her, we knew that it would be, we had so many big in stature as well, magical based villains, that we thought it would be really interesting to have a villain that was outside of that mold. So child, small, non-magical, at first anyway. It seemed really like an interesting idea, and a more cerebrally based villain seemed to be a good challenge for us. Could we do that? But in terms of her motivations, I mean, it was power, of course, but what drove her to that quest for power, I think, and it was never 100% set down, because I think Nicole had like an origin in mind for her that we never really got a chance to get into, and she didn't share all the details with us. But I do think that there was some sort of childhood trauma there that drove her to feel in a similar fashion to Starlight, because I feel like most people's trauma that shapes who they are as they grow up, whether it's from in Starlight's case, from a little kid to an adult, or Cozy Glow to little kid to slightly older little kid. I don't know. Maybe she's an adult. We don't know for sure. I think a lot of those things for all of us is rooted in some defining moment from our childhoods. And I do think that in the overarching universe of the series, because it is aimed at younger kids, having that moment come from their childhood says a lot more about how we deal with that. And it's a good lesson for kids, how we process those moments. So that was my thinking, is that there was something in her upbringing that she felt powerless and outcast, and became disillusioned with whatever system she was a part of, whether she was abandoned or orphaned, little orphan Annie style. Like maybe she was in a situation where she wasn't adopted by kind people and sort of had to learn to fend for herself, therefore didn't trust anyone. That kind of stuff, I think, was sort of always in my mind about how we were playing her. But again, there was no definitive, this is the text for why she is the way she is.
Sure, and almost better to leave it that way, because it leaves room for, well, not just different fan theories, but different interpretations and different not
different takes on it,
different takes on it, but different arguments can be made about the morality or lack thereof. Really, you can get kind of into the, well, how much trauma, early childhood trauma, excuses her later behavior, if it does, or can it explain it but not excuse it, or if it does at all. Right. And that ties in a little bit with the decision, at least insofar as the show's run is concerned, not to have her as a redeemed character. We've seen other antagonists, even villains, redeemed, but that was not the case with her, which
like maybe
took some people by surprise, but it's in the same time, it's not something we'd seen.
Our thing for that was, Discord wasn't necessarily an evil to the core character. He has shown through his arc that he has been redeemed to a certain degree, and he was imprisoned for a long time. I don't necessarily look at the stuck in stone as a forever thing, the same way that Discord was freed from stone at a time where he could make the friends that would actually have an impact on his growth and development. Maybe the same thing will hold true for Cozy Glow, and she'll meet the right people at the right time that will be able to do that. Or I don't know, again, coming from my love of comic books, I always think it's good to leave your villains, you have to leave some villains out there to menace your heroes again. So not every villain gets a redemption arc, or even if they do, sometimes it's just temporary, because the stories never end. They never truly end. You could always do more with them. So by leaving those three big bads as kind of like, are they stuck in that stone forever? Will they be back? Could someone let them out? Are they gone forever? We wanted to leave some questions at the end of the series.
And insofar as shows like this inculcating values in an audience of children, there's value in the lesson that some folks can be redeemed and some folks are not redeemable. That's you can argue that one either way, but it's an interesting message to put out there.
For sure.
We have a nice question here. With all the spotlight on Pony from fans' perspective, are there any aspects of the show that you think are underrated or overlooked? So things about the show that just didn't get the attention you would have liked.
I think there's a lot of crew members outside of the people you see at conventions, and no disrespect to the crew members who have been at conventions, but there's so many people involved in making the show that all deserve the same level of attention and feedback from the fans, from storyboard artists and designers, and even people like coordinators, audio engineers. Like, there's so much stuff. The animators in the Philippines who never get to come to conventions, just because no one has the way to contact them outside of us, and that's not really a position we are in to invite them to a convention. That kind of thing. Sure. that kind of thing. I think there's lots and lots of other interesting stories that people would be interested to hear, because everyone's got a unique perspective based on their role in the show. And there's lots of, there's a lot more diversity in the crew than some of the people you've seen. Like we've had, and again, no disrespect to anyone, myself included. I feel like I'm just another boring white guy talking about making this show, but we've had people of color on the show. We have LGBT plus people on the show, and people from all sorts of walks of life. So they all have unique and interesting stories. Whether they want to share them, that's up to them. But I do think they don't get enough attention.
So would that be kind of advice that you want to offer to folks in the fandom who are involved in making those decisions as to who gets an invitation to conventions and so forth?
There would be a lot of people who probably won't be interested in attending a convention, and that's fair. That's their thing. But I do think that if the conventions out there were interested in finding those people and approaching them, I think you would have some interesting different takes on even some familiar stories, because they're from a different perspective.
So take that under advisement, folks. We've got a question here. What is the best way of getting you gift artwork? Obviously, if this was an in-person convention and someone had done art for you, they would be able to hand it to you. But unfortunately, in the current circumstances, it's a bit difficult. And we have someone here who drew your picture as a GIF featuring two ponies because they really wanted to thank you for all of your work on the show.
They can either, if they want to just send me a screen cap on like Twitter, they can send me, if they're on Twitter, that's easy. Okay. If they're not on Twitter and don't want to be on Twitter, and I totally understand if you don't want to be on Twitter, and you want to mail me the physical drawing, the best thing to do is probably to mail it to Wild Brain Studios, formerly DHX, and you can find the Vancouver address on their website. I think it's 380 West 5th Avenue. But if it goes there, they'll let me know there's mail there for me, and I can go in and pick it up.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you Thank you to that person, for which I'm sure is a fantastic drawing. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
That's Switch Pony, or Switch Pon 3.
That's Switch Pony, or Switch Pone.
Switch Pone 3, Switch Pon. Question from It Tales. Have you ever met the Jim Miller MMA fighter with the same name?
No, I haven't. But I have, as I'm sure everyone has done, looked up their own name on Google to see who comes up. And there's an evangelical preacher out there named Jim Miller, who I think had a radio show, which was kind of interesting. But no, I have not met the Jim Miller, who's an MMA fighter. That'd be pretty interesting.
Got a question here from Private Iron, which is a little bit self-serving for me, but it's Jim. Do you have any questions for Foley?
Are you still at your parents' house?
Yeah, I am.
I think the big sigh there gives me all the answers I need to know.
Yeah, I'm fortunate enough to be able to work from home or work remotely. So I have been sheltering with my folks up in Massachusetts. I'm usually down in Virginia. Mm-hmm. But yep, still up there, still trying to help them out, still trying to make sure that they stay safe and healthy in this.
You're a good son.
Well, trying to be. Still messing about in the basement. I've gone from plumbing to grinding down the concrete floors and learning how to repoint fieldstone walls using lime bloody mortar that doesn't have any. It just gets ridiculous.
And have you smashed your 3D printer yet, or are you still worked out all your kinks?
It is not a friend to me right now, the 3D printer. And thankfully, the need for 3D printed face shields has gone down because actual PPE has been making the rounds. So I'm grateful that need for it. I'm grateful I don't have to have my printer up and running again 24/7 because it was a pain to keep working.
I'm sure.
I mean, going into the winter, I'm really hoping we don't have a resurgence of the need for that. It's going to get dicey.
It's scary. I'm hoping people will be smart and pay attention to the statistics and realize that it's not going away just because we're all tired of it.
Yeah, but my and deep sighing aside, I am very much grateful that we're all safe and healthy and in a position to be able to shelter from this when a lot of other people aren't nearly as lucky and fortunate.
Absolutely, yeah.
Scrolling through the questions. A lesson from Ed, and Eddie that you took to Pony that was really the most sort of influential on you. Obviously, Ed, and Eddie, your first industry gig, you would have had a lot of lessons.
Yeah, I think one of the big ones.
Pony, but what was the big one?
Big one was best joke wins. I think is always the thing. Like, you know, if someone comes with a joke that's funnier than the one that's in there in a script or in a board, you got to do it. It's the best joke wins. It only makes everything better.
So don't be too precious about your own jokes if your joke happens to not be there.
I mean, the other thing we always talked about, and it's a horrendous term, so I apologize in advance, but we used to call it killing your babies. So like if you have a sequence that even you spent a long time on, or something that you love but doesn't necessarily add to the overall episode, sometimes you have to be okay with just getting rid of it. Because even if it is great, you can't be precious about your material.
Sure.
Because you have a larger thing that you're in service to. And sometimes that meant throwing away great ideas or funny jokes or really beautiful moments just because there was no place or time to deal with them.
Any that particularly come to mind that you were really quite attached to for Pony, but that just didn't work for one reason or another?
It's all become a bit of a blur, if I'm being honest. I mean, this is almost 10 years of stuff and many different iterations of things in there. Nothing is jumping to the forefront of my mind at the moment. I mean, there was stuff that the board artists did in the T-Rex fight. It went on a lot longer, and it was super cool, but it was also just too long of a fight, you know, that kind of thing. You just pick some cool moments that work in terms of the flow and get in and get out for the amount of time you have to deal with it. But there was so much cool stuff. It could have been another 30 seconds to a minute of fighting, which when you're dealing with 22 minutes of an episode, that's a lot of fighting.
Do you think that there will come a time when you can look back and not see things that you would have wanted to change and just enjoy it you'll always just have that insight into how the sausage was made, and that'll always...
I think so. I think also the problem is you grow and learn with each passing year. So the current you will look at stuff done by past you and go, with my brain now, I could have made this better. I should have timed this a little tighter or given this moment more time or whatever it was. But I mean, you're sort of always restricted by schedule and budget and all those sorts of things. And as great as they were on the show, they are the box you have to work within.
Goodness, I'm failing here. There was another question that I wanted to ask that I'm scrolling up to try to find.
You can never find it when you want to.
Right? Oh, dear, oh dear. I don't know whether to ask this one or not.
Go for it. There's nothing off bounds here.
Well, you say that, but Flutterkind would like to know, in your opinion, why is M.A. Larson the worst?
I don't think he's the worst. I think he's a very nice man, and he puts up with a lot of bullshit from you guys.
He does. He puts up with a lot of BS from me, so yeah.
Yes, exactly. He's a very patient man, and I think
good guy.
He should get a lot of brownie points for that.
He is a good guy. He is a very good sport, and he gives us good or better than he gets. So,
absolutely.
Chip Unicorn would like to know what secrets you have for bringing emotion into a scene. So, I guess from all different aspects, not just the animation, but also the writing, and if you're doing directing, the voice directing, because you've had a hand in virtually every different aspect of the show at one point or another when you were on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think the main thing is, and it's something that I would tell the board artists and the animators a lot, is you can't skimp on it. Like it happened a lot in some of the musical episodes where you would have someone working on it was like, I don't really like musicals. I have a hard time buying into the sort of fabrication of the moment that a character would just burst into song, but you have to buy into it. You have to just go with it and just be like, yes, it's weird. Yes, it's a little bit artificial, but I have to just invest myself into that moment. So that's sort of a key thing. And like, if you can feel some of those emotions, whether they're from that specific situation that your characters are in, or a sort of a parallel situation, you can go, well, this is kind of like something I experienced in my own life, and try and draw from your own past experience. And you can heighten it or lessen it based on how you want to go, but you know what those feelings are like, and that can sort of inform how you have characters talk about how they're feeling, and you may have moments from your own life where we're experiencing something, you're like, I wish I had said this. And then it can be really cathartic to have your characters actually say the things that you wished you had said in that moment. For the visual storytelling side, emotional moments are often played a lot closer because you want to feel that intimacy with the character. You need really strong facial acting, really good, clear poses. You don't play a really sad moment from an aerial shot super far away, because the emotional moments are all about the subtleties of, like, you want to be close enough to their eyes so that, are you seeing tears are starting to form? If you're at the top of the Empire State Building looking down at this conversation, you can't tell. So you want to be up close. You want to see their faces. You want to have enough room, if you need to have them move away from each other or come closer. And it's a lot of the things about, like, where you're putting your cameras when you're storyboarding, things like that. And then in terms of the animation, a lot of that's sort of dictated by the style of the show. So something like a Johnny Test, it's a really snappy animation style. So the subtlety of an emotional scene how you treat it may be very differently than how you would do something for Pony. And also, Johnny Test is the kind of show where if there was an emotional moment, you'd probably undercut it with a joke. Donald Dark again.
Oh, goodness. Things got spooky.
So, yeah, well, Halloween's coming up.
Oh, my Lord. That in itself is bloody spooky. Where's the year gone?
No kidding.
Sorry, you were saying?
Yeah, so like the style of the piece you're working on, whether it's a written piece or an animated thing, like, you have to be true to what the show is. So if it's a goofy show, you probably are going to want to have some silly things in your emotional moment. Whereas Pony, we knew that we had to play to the sincerity of all those moments and play them straight. And make sure that emotional moment hit. And then the payoff was when you did have a funny moment, which didn't always break the emotional moment, it would be that much funnier.
I am just the person who made art for you has posted it in the Discord. I don't believe you're on the Discord.
No, I'm not, unfortunately.
If you'll bear with me for 2 seconds, can download that image, and I think I can send it to you over Zoom, so we get cool. your live reaction to it.
That'd be great.
Just trying to set that up. This might take a few minutes. In the meantime, oh dear. Trying to do too many things at once. I want to expand the question that, do you have any questions for me? That's bollocks. Do you have any questions for the fandom that you would like the fandom to answer? And I can relay the answers in the opposite direction. I can relay the answers from the folks in the chat to you. So any burning questions of the fandom?
Are they excited about where the brand, I should say, is going next? Like, are they happy with how the show ended and what's coming next with Pony Life and whatever they're doing with G5? If they're doing G5, I have no clue. Like, are people still excited, or they sort of feel like they're sticking with G4 and that's it? And there's no right or wrong answers. I'm not fishing for compliments here.
Well, we'll find an answer to that in a moment. Meanwhile, I'm struggling with trying to get you this piece of artwork. You mentioned the ways to get it to you via Twitter
you have me on Twitter DMs. You could just send it on the DM, and I'll look that up right now.
That would make more sense than the approach that I'm trying to take, which is bringing it up on my iPad and then showing it to you.
Right, because I have my phone here, so.
Oh, wait, but I got it to work. Hold on.
Oh, okay.
Come on, stop it. Right. Oh, my Lord. Okay, this is not, I will send you a proper version of it, but that is the piece that was done for you.
Hey, so cool. Very awesome. I wish I had a slice of that cake right now.
And I will send you a proper copy of that, and hopefully they will be able to send you a copy via Twitter or via snail mail as well. But wanted to get you the opportunity to watch that from Switch, Pon 3.
Thank you so much, Switch. That's awesome.
As to the question you asked of us, we've got cautiously optimistic. Some of us are scared, some of us are hopeful. Optimistic, reasonably excited. High hopes, excited. G4 was amazing, but there's hope for the future. Nervously optimistic, a little bit of nervous. So nervous-sighted by the sound of it.
That's pretty good. I think that's what I was expecting. And I just hope that whatever comes next, that fans give not only the show, but the creators a fair shot. Don't dismiss it on the first episode. Give it a season if you can, just to see where they're going with things. It's hard to gauge. Like, I know for me, when I'm starting a new show, I can't always dismiss something after one episode. I got to dive in 3 or 4 or more just to see if they're playing a long game or what. So I just hope you give everyone the same consideration that you so graciously gave us on G4.
And it is hard coming off, 10 years of either working on a show or loving a show. It's hard to adjust to something that is new and that might not be to your taste. But
right.
Yeah, if there's one thing we've learned, it's to give it a fair shot, right?
Yeah, and if you don't like it, that's okay too. Like, you don't have to like everything. I've talked about this before. Like, I'm a longtime Batman fan. He's been around for 80 plus years now. Some stuff is amazing and some stuff is trash, and that's okay. That doesn't devalue the property. You just hold on to the things you like a lot and don't pay attention to the ones you don't.
I think that's a pretty decent place to leave it, because we've got about 1 minute left, but I like that's the final note. But do you have any other sort of words of advice or wisdom that you would like to share with the fandom, or just anything at all you'd like to say?
I guess just, the world feels a little screwed up right now, and everyone's grouchy and a little bit on edge, and everyone's going through their own personal BS. So if you can, try and be patient with each other, be understanding, practice the things from the show. Be patient and kind and tolerant, and try and help people. If you're in a better situation than someone else and you're in a position you can help someone else, do that. One of the things I've been doing, because I'm at home a lot and not going out as much, have a teeny bit of extra cash, giving some more money to charity than I do normally, because I have a little bit of extra. If you're in a position to do that, just support causes you care about, whether they're political or just human, like donating money to people who are helping to feed people, or if you have homeless people in your neighborhood. If you support the Black Lives Matter stuff like I do, and I know you do, then please give money to those people. Give money to LGBTQ plus charities who are struggling with all sorts of horrible shit in the world. We can all lift each other up if we're just practice.
We should put in a shameless plug for the vendors as well.
Absolutely. That's the whole reason we're doing this.
I believe they're still open. So if you haven't checked out the vendor hall yet, folks, by all means, please do so.
Yeah, that's the whole point of this con, is to help these people who aren't able to go to in-person conventions and make enough money to live. So go and buy their stuff, support them, buy lots of their stuff, so that they can not only continue to make beautiful art that you love, but also have a place and a home to do it in.
And on that note, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much, Jim. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you, everyone in the audience, for your wonderful questions. If they have questions or stuff they want to get to you, is hitting you up on Twitter cool?
Absolutely. Anytime.
Awesome. So, folks, we will leave it there. Thank you all for joining us, and enjoy the rest of the con. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.